Well, hello there. It's IB Nation Sports Talk After Dark. It's not a happy hour today, along with Vince D'Addario. I'm Sean Stiers. We've been traveling, what do you call that, intracontinentally? We've been all over the place.
And it's all happened in the span of like 3 days.
It has.
For you.
That's true.
But yeah, traveling all over the dang place, man. It's kind of hard to believe. It went so fast. From start to finish. And the funny part was we left at 9 p.m. on Sunday. We returned at exactly 9 p.m. on Tuesday, which is like, I mean, when you're traveling as far as we did to hit that exact moment was actually pretty funny. So
we were gone for exactly 48 hours, and we were in the rented vehicle for 21 of it. So, well, and actually a little bit more than that when you think about it. Like
driving around Atlanta.
The fact of the drive, to and from Atlanta and all that stuff. So probably 22 plus hours.
Correct.
So
so about almost half. And of course there was sleeping involved, both in the car and out. But
Sabrina says story time.
I mean,
that's our first mailbag question of the night. Story time. I don't think we drove each other crazy.
No, I don't think so. We had some good chats.
When you're in close quarters, could be, like you never know. There was only one time that I think I was really on Vince's nerves, and that's when we were fighting traffic getting out after the game. Because
it's so brief, though.
Yeah, it was the GPS told us to go on this particular street. And so we sat there, and there's all these cars like backed up for a block at this stoplight. And literally the stoplight never turned green. It just stayed red the whole time. And so finally we went off on this side street to kind of get around because we had to go pick up Dylan, Vince's son. So we had to go in this specific direction. And we got in a little debate about, do we, after we, went around the block, it's like, do we follow specifically what the GPS is saying? Because it felt to me like there was a little bit more traffic that way. And I'm like, maybe if you just go up a block here and then go around, we'll just divert the traffic. And then it turned out the traffic was kind of backed up because there was this club right on this corner. And, valets were parking cars in the middle of the street. Nobody could get around them and stuff like that. It was nuts.
It was so annoying. That part was annoying.
Yes.
There's a reason
everyone gets a little wound up when it comes to, traffic not moving anywhere. So.
Yeah. It wasn't even that I was annoyed with you. I was just annoyed at the entire situation. And I don't like necessarily going off like the path that we're supposed to go on.
I can tell.
Especially in a place where I don't know where we are.
My thing is don't argue with the GPS, but at the same time,
sure.
Be flexible and know that there are other options sometimes. So.
And that's fair. That's absolutely fair. Finally, I did just do what you told me to do, and it worked out just fine. So I should just take.
We made it. We made it, right?
Yeah, but
thank you very much, Anthony. I don't know if $9.99 will cover the entire trip, but we do appreciate the spirit behind the super chat.
That's fantastic. No, it was a good trip. I think Sean and I have known each other for 20 plus years.
20 plus years at this point. So
yeah, so
we know we pushes each other's buttons.
We do. We know each other pretty well, and having the third wheel of my kid there didn't hurt the situation any. In fact, on the way home, he did some driving, which was very beneficial for both of us.
It was nice because us old guys were worn out by the time it was all. Man.
We were. We absolutely
that was
were.
A long night. Because, literally, we got to bed. We left town Saturday night at 9 o'clock after the women's basketball game. We stayed a little bit south of Louisville. We got to bed at, around 1 o'clock, 1:30. Got up. We didn't get up early, but still, we didn't get as much sleep as we would have.
Right.
And, we hit the road, drove the rest of the way to Atlanta, and then got into our hotel, kind of freshened up a little bit. Hit downtown, got our credentials, went to the game, and it was like bada bing, bada boom.
Yeah.
In bed around 2 a.m. and then up and on the road again the next day. So it was quick.
It was very, very quick.
I will say this. I mean, obviously everyone wanted a different outcome, but in that Dome Stadium with the open air press box of the Dome Stadium, it was a great environment throughout the game.
Yeah.
Someone was asking, I saw in here, what the split of the crowd was. And I would say, what would you think, 60-40? I saw someone say 65-35. I don't know.
No, it wasn't 65-35. It may have felt that way, especially in the second quarter. But just going off of like the colors and things of that nature, inside the stadium, I would say 60-40, maybe even like a 62, I don't know, or 58-42. It wasn't 50-50, but it wasn't as bad as Georgia was.
No, I still think it was closer to 60% Ohio State, just because there was just like, from where we were sitting all the way around, like the Notre Dame green was over here, kind of to our right, and there was a lot of red in there. And like, now I will say, when it came to noise, like when things, like the Notre Dame crowd held its own, I felt like. So, that's why I say 60-40 maybe, because that's just a little bit more than a 50-50 split. It's just an eyeball test. It's not like we know exactly. But there were definitely more Ohio State fans, but there were a lot of Notre Dame fans still too.
There's a lot. And Notre Dame fans made their presence known. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And I did like the open air press box as well. Look, the accommodations within the stadium were fantastic, in my opinion. That's a state-of-the-art stadium. They do it right. The security was top-notch. I will say that. I was very impressed with the food. Like,
you weren't fudging getting in or out of that press box. I'll tell you that much.
No, you had to have a credential with your face on it if you wanted to get in or out, which was good. I mean, we had to scan our IDs to get on the field, which I've never had to do before. I thought that was kind of fascinating as well. So they had that place on lockdown, which I'm okay with. I really am. But it was a great atmosphere. It was a great, everything about it outside of the outcome was fantastic. I mean, the food was really good. Everything was really good. I really enjoyed the entire scenario, obviously, except for the loss, sure. And the company was great. So had a good time. My kid, people were worried about my kid. He did not get into the game.
He did not make it into the game, Matt.
Yes. Prices.
That's why we had to go pick him up after the game.
Prices went the wrong direction the day of the game. You would assume it would go down. And it started out at like $1,700 was like the lowest price. By the time the game started, the lowest price ticket was $4,500. Like it was bonkers. So he ended up going to a restaurant, watching the game, made some friends with some people because he was sitting at a table by himself for 6 people. And I was like, dude, you're messing with the waitress right now. Like you need to help her out, man. Go get some people, sit them down at your table. And so he went and went to the wait, like where everybody was waiting. He picked out these college guys. He's like, are you guys Notre Dame fans? They're like, we could be. And they sat with him and they had a good time. And I guess they were recently graduated guys. So he made some friends, got some numbers.
Yeah.
So it worked out really, really well. And Brian, you don't have to apologize. Brian Cribbs is in the chat. He did his best to try and get Dylan a ticket. Totally appreciate, man, you going above and beyond. You only can do what you can do, man. He had a blast, and he and I were texting the whole game. So it was awesome. And Sean, you got to have a first.
I did. And I was about to throw that up there. Buc-ee's, my first Buc-ee's trip.
Yeah.
Stymie asked how many hours we're spending lost inside Buc-ee's. I think we were there probably 30 minutes or something like that. Yeah. We didn't dawdle too long. And this was in the middle of Kentucky. There were a lot of other Notre Dame people coming back on the road. We saw a lot of Notre Dame sweatshirts and gear. And we actually had you had your IB sweatshirt on, and someone spotted that.
I know. The fans everywhere, man. It's awesome.
IB travels. That's right.
It was awesome. But yeah, we weren't with our wives, so there wasn't a whole lot of like.
When I don't think I've told you this. I got home and I told I said, have you ever heard of Buc-ee's? She said, yes. She has never been to one, and she was very mad at me for not telling her I was stopping in a Buc-ee's. Yes.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And there's this wall of beef jerky inside of Buc-ee's, and I got myself some sweet and spicy jerky, but it was right next to this smoked cherry jerky. And she said that I said, what would you have wanted me to get you? The smoked cherry is what she would have wanted.
No kidding.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Remember specifically looking at that, but I got the 3-meat barbecue sandwich. It was delicious.
Yeah.
Like brisket, and they do pulled pork and smoked sausages, and there's just that place is nuts, man.
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
It
like
is.
you can't really, because I tried to describe it to you on the way down, because we passed a few obviously on the way down, and you kind of, I don't think you were buying in. Well, I didn't do a good job of explaining it. I don't think you were like, I don't believe you, is what it felt like. So we had to hit it on the way back. And I don't know if it was everything that you dreamed it would be, but they literally have everything there. Like anything you can think of, they have it, which is.
I was impressed.
Yeah.
I would go back. I would go back for the beef jerky alone. I'll tell you that.
Oh, so, it was a lot of fun. I did call my wife, and I I was there anything that you
I know?
Because we hit a Buc-ee's for the first time over the summer.
I told my wife that your wife wanted you to walk around with the FaceTime on.
She did.
Just so she could see inside the Buc-ee's.
I was like, I'm not doing that. It's like we're stopping momentarily. We're getting out of here. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. So good trip overall. It was good.
So I was telling Jesse today, did you see Joe Montana, the pictures on Twitter X with Travis Scott, this rapper?
I did not see anything online. I saw him in person on the sidelines.
I did too. I was there. There's some pictures of Travis Scott. I guess he's a rapper, a singer. I don't know exactly what his specific genre is, but I was literally standing like 10, 12 feet away when that photo was snapped. And then the next thing I know, it's up there all over the place on social media. So
were you in the background?
No, I was on the other side,
okay.
The particular,
gotcha.
Yeah, I was kind of behind the person taking the photo of them.
Gotcha.
So yeah,
gotcha.
But then like Joe Montana's family was off to the side, his wife and one of his sons, and it looked like maybe the wife or girlfriend or something of the son, and then Marcus Freeman's wife also passed by with a couple of their kids. Right when all that was going on, it was. I realized Joe was out there pimping for Guinness, but could you have worn something Notre Dame? Could you have had like something with Guinness and Notre Dame on it? Did it just have to be Guinness? Like, I don't know.
I was a little.
Maybe they paid him for that, wearing that sweatshirt.
I'm sure it's all part of the deal. That he's stumping for Guinness and all. The Golics didn't have anything Notre Dame on, from what I understand, or at least the older Golic didn't. He blamed his wife for setting out his clothing.
Junior was down. He was wearing, is it like DraftKings that they work for?
Yeah.
He was doing like a stand-up on the sideline. He had a DraftKings microphone. So, I mean, he was working anyway. I didn't see Senior.
I saw a little snippet because Junior blamed Senior for the loss because he wasn't wearing Notre Dame gear.
I did see that.
And he blamed his wife for setting out his clothes for him. So totally threw her under the bus. Yeah. Because apparently she dresses him every day, which I, didn't know that.
It's one way to go.
It is one way to. Does your wife put out your clothing for you?
No, she does not.
Yeah, mine either. Now, she may throw some opinions my way. In general, I'd be like, okay, I don't really care that much. But yeah, 99% of the time, it's all me. I got the Sugar Bowl
all natural
sweatshirt on. It's a very interesting. It's like you can kind of see like the trophy, like it's black on black, which is an interesting. And it's better with the light actually on it.
It's interesting. The championship game sweatshirts that we got is the media gift. Yeah. It's same brand as yours, Nike, but the logo is on one sleeve, and otherwise it's just a plain gray sweatshirt with the Nike on the front.
It's a cool logo, and it says ATL on it, and like
I just would have liked it to be on the front or something.
It's just very plain on the front, and this one actually is very plain as well. It's got the Sugar Bowl logo on the back, like very small on like the upper collar. Interesting choice. I don't know. But apparently crew neck sweatshirts were the media gift pretty much the whole way. So did not get a media gift at the Notre Dame IU game. Not sure how I feel about that.
Well, we got the
towel.
The rally
So did
towels.
everybody, though. It's not special.
Well, it's something.
I want to feel
we got
special.
something.
I want to feel special.
Something. Let's get into some questions. We got some
All
questions
right.
here stacked up, and it is
All
mailbag night. We appreciate
It is.
your questions. We've got some rapid fire stuff, of course, we'll be doing like we always do a little bit later. Salty wants to know, when does Notre Dame's extended portal window close and how many players will enter? Vince.
So I believe the portal window closes on the 24th, which is Friday. So
End of the week. Yeah.
More days.
There were 5 days I saw that they got. So
a few more days. And I assume there's going to be some more movement off of the Notre Dame roster. You know, it's funny because usually everybody's freaking out about like the 85 rule and all of that. That doesn't matter anymore. Like
the 85 is totally, it's 105 now.
It's arbitrary at this point. You know what I mean? Because even if Notre Dame sticks at 85 scholarships, which I think is kind of the understood thing that everybody's going to do, you can supplement everybody else on your roster with NIL money so that they're not paying. You know what I mean? I was talking to the dad of a walk-on the other day, and they were basically saying, you know, yeah, you're a walk-on, but you're getting your stuff taken care of through NIL, which I have no problem with, obviously. But and I'm happy that they're able to take care of those kids because, you know, you put a kid through college, I'm putting one starting now and 4 more behind it through college. Like,
yeah, good luck.
It's an expensive endeavor, endeavor. And if you're going to go to a place like Notre Dame that costs like $80,000 a year or more, getting a little assistance is not a bad thing. So especially when you're putting your body on the line at practice and everything else. So
now Travis is asking 5 business days or is Saturday the last day? I mean, I would assume, I think it might actually
Friday was the last day, but I don't know.
See, I heard 5 days after the season. So that would put it at Saturday, which is technically the end of the actual week, because the official week is Sunday through Saturday. So
right.
I mean, either way, it's the end of this week, whichever day it happens to be. But yeah, Brian says 5 days after the last, again, it'll be this weekend, by the end of this week. That'll be it. That's as long as it stays open. And then, that's for them to put their name in. And then, they can obviously still be contacted, once they're in the transfer portal and that kind of stuff. So.
And there's going to be more. I mean, you got 3 today. There's definitely going to be more. I mean, I don't have any names to share or anything like that. I can make some assumptions, but I'm not going to do that. But there's going to be more because there's a lot of talent on this team, Sean, and there's going to be some guys that are going to get pushed out. So it's like, okay, I'm not going to give them a hard time about leaving, they didn't stay to get their degree and they're not dedicated. They want to play football. Like I have no problem. Like you want to go and play. Yeah. There's a lot of kids on this team that are good enough to play elsewhere and play a lot and start, and where they might not get to play at Notre Dame. Okay. I mean, I get it. I have no problem with that. So you're going to see some attrition. There's going to be some more guys, whether they're depth pieces or not. You may be disappointed with some of the guys that jump in, but yeah, I mean, it happens every year. You move on, you fill those holes, and you keep moving. You getting infiltrated over there?
I don't know. I heard something. It sounded like, I don't know exactly what it was. My voice might be carrying. It might be echoing around the, who knows? So Mike is a very happy person. He says, if you think about it, what has Freeman done that Kelly didn't?
What has Freeman done in the last 3 weeks that Brian Kelly never did?
I mean, for one, he beat 2 top 10 teams in the postseason in consecutive weeks. He won 2 major bowls in consecutive weeks. Brian Kelly never won a major bowl.
And that's the short list. Okay. Yeah. He also happens to have the respect of every player on his roster, which I don't think was the case in the past either. So, and you can just tell that by listening to some of the alumni speak. So, I will say that's that's a tough pill for me to swallow, Micah. Freeman has done a lot that Kelly has yet to do or did not do at Notre Dame. And again, we will give Kelly all the credit that he deserves for bringing the program to where it was when he handed it off to Freeman. But Kelly thought this was as far as he could go. That's why he left. He's more entitled to his opinion. That's fine. But he didn't think he could win the big game. Freeman hasn't won the big game yet, granted, but he won a lot more big games than Brian Kelly ever did.
Yeah,
I mean, to this point.
If you want to say they both lost in a national championship game, okay. But look at how each of those games played out. And I mean, that just itself is different, the way Notre Dame's played out, especially when you consider, what did it come out to? Like 7, 8 starters who were lost along the way, that Marcus Freeman had to replace, compared to 2012. I mean, a lot of things went right for both of those teams, but at the end of the day, beating top 10 teams in the postseason, Marcus Freeman beat 2 of them in consecutive weeks. So,
right.
If you just want to boil it down, like that alone is it, and Brian Kelly won a lot of games in 12 years, but Marcus Freeman has a much better record against top 10 teams than Brian Kelly had in the entire Marcus Freeman's already won more games against top 10 teams than Brian Kelly did in a dozen years at Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. So I think the list of what has won, what's Freeman done that Kelly didn't, I think it's, at the very least starts with that, if nothing else. Joe says, anyone catch that Leonard Moore topped out at 22 miles an hour on the play when he ran down Judkins? I think I had heard this. I didn't,
Sure. I mean, look, it's impressive to do that with football equipment on. It's not a hugely impressive number just for like straight ahead sprinting. But it's impressive that he's able to do that at that point in the game, with all that equipment on and everything else. Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. Good. That's great.
Carlos, do you think that there was any chance Golden's head was not in the right mindset, seeing as we didn't seem to play our type of defensive game?
Is it possible? Sure. I'm not in the head of Al Golden, so I don't know that for sure. I don't want to project, right? Is it possible that his head was elsewhere, in preparation? Sure. I don't think the defense was as prepared as it usually is. I didn't like the game plan. That's my opinion. It's not like he was thinking about the Bengals job during the game. You know what I mean? But
look, there was 11 days in between games. It's not like
right.
Al Golden was spending 10 hours a day sitting there, preparing for his interview with Cincinnati. I don't think that one has anything to do with another. I think that more than anything, when you look at Golden's defensive game plan, I don't think it's because his mindset wasn't right. I think that, it reminded me a lot of Notre Dame at USC in, what would that have been, 2022, Marcus Freeman's first season, Caleb Williams, when Al Golden basically, changed the defense up, trying to come up with a specific game plan for USC. It reminded me of that, he went outside of the strengths of the Notre Dame defense because he felt like, there was certainly Ohio State showed that they have a lot of skill players who can make a lot of plays. Now, they did some different things as well. Chip Kelly went off his script attacking Notre Dame's defense, so that played into it. But at the same time, it just felt to me like Al Golden changed up his game plans specifically because of the kind of athletes that Ohio State was going to throw at their defense. And, obviously it didn't work very well.
Yeah, it just.
But I don't think the Bengals thing had anything to do with it, personally.
Yeah, I just think it felt like he was coaching scared to a little bit of a degree. That's me. Again, that's my personal opinion. I don't know what he was thinking, positively, negatively, whatever. I don't know. I just don't think he had a good game plan. So, however you want to blame that one, I just don't think it was a good game plan in this situation. And there's no way he game planned to allow Will Howard to scramble and get those yards, right? So I think it's twofold, right? I didn't like the game plan, but I also don't think it was executed that well either. So that's part of it, right? They didn't get any pressure on Will Howard. I don't think that Al Golden went into this game thinking to himself, we'll just let Will Howard do whatever he needs to do back there. We'll just figure it out, on the back end. No, he wanted to put pressure on Will Howard. They just didn't do it, right? So, bad game plan and bad execution. It's a bad combination.
Like I said last week, leading into the game, I think it proved out that was the game they really missed Riley Mills.
For sure. Oh, yes.
Gabe Rubio
absolutely.
played great against the run games of Penn State and Georgia, but they needed to generate pass rush. And especially, it's been a long time, but after Botelho and Traore went out with their injuries, their best pass rush came from the combination of Howard Cross and Riley Mills playing together. And without Riley Mills there, able to generate some of that pass rush, you saw the result of that.
Right.
And it's not a shot at Gabe Rubio, but that's one of the strengths that Riley Mills brought to the team was his ability to generate pass rush. He still ended up being the sack leader for this team.
Right.
And that's where they missed Mills most of all, was his ability to get that rush on.
Completely agree. Yeah, completely agree.
This kind of piggybacks a little bit on the Marcus Freeman, Brian Kelly question. Is Notre Dame now among the elite that will perennially contest for a national championship?
Talk to me a year from now.
Yeah.
I mean, and I don't mean that to be sarcastic or facetious or whatever. That's not what I mean. But let's see them string a couple of years together where they are contending for a national championship, right? That's what I need to see. So make the 12-team playoff again, host a game. If you can do that a couple of years in a row, then yes, then I will say yes to this. Right now, jury's still out. They had a really good year. But don't flop next year and with a harder schedule and a new quarterback and everything else that goes along with next year. I'm very excited about next year. I think they can be really good, but we need to see it, right? We need to see them amongst the elite for next year. So 2 years in a row, then let's have this conversation. Right now, jury's still out for me.
No, that's exactly right. You look at Brian Kelly's next 2 years, things weren't great after getting to the national championship game. Then 2015, things were a little bit better. 2016, it bottomed out. Then it took a couple years after that. I feel like that the program right now is in a really great place foundationally, and it starts with Marcus Freeman. And you and I were talking, coming home, when you think of everything that this team has coming back, there is a lot coming back. You're going to lose Xavier Watts. You're going to lose the 2 interior defensive linemen. You're going to lose Jack Kaiser on defense. But other than that, everybody's coming back. And obviously I'm not talking about Benjamin Morrison because he was out for more than half the season as well. Other side, you've literally got a 2 deep of offensive linemen coming back on the other side of the ball.
Yeah.
A bunch of the receivers are going to be back. You're adding Fields out of the transfer portal, and you're adding a tight end as well. So, the biggest question is going to be the quarterback. And guess what we're going to get to talk about for the next
8 months?
At least 3 months.
Look, in a perfect world, they name whoever the quarterback is going to be at the end of spring. I just would not bet on that happening. So,
got a couple of questions from the Champions Lounge. Speaking of offensive line, from left tackle to right tackle, whom do you gentlemen see starting across the offensive line against the Hurricanes down in Miami, August 31st, 2025?
All right. So the locks for me are, hold on, let me look at one thing before I say what I want to say here. Okay. So the locks for me, this is obviously everybody's healthy. Ashton Craig at center, Billy Schrouth at left guard. Those are locks.
Yes.
I'm very interested to see what Rocco Spindler does. He's got another year of eligibility. So I'm interested to see kind of where that goes.
I think that we both think that he's, and there are others who think this as well. He's someone to keep an eye on this week, as this week goes on, right? Like what he decides to do. Is he coming back? Is he leaving?
Is he going to go to the NFL?
What's he doing? Because remember, like this guy, was not a starter at the start of the season. It took one of those injuries to get him on the offensive line, even though he was a starter last year.
Right.
So how does that, play into?
Well, and the guy that started ahead of him just went into the portal.
Yeah, that's right.
You know what I mean?
He's already gone. But there's a ton of other guys there are literally at least two legit probably guys for every position on the offensive
100%.
line.
That's why this is not a lock, and by any stretch of the imagination, what I'm coming up with here. I just think Schrouth has earned his spot. I think Craig has earned his spot. Jagasaw is going to start somewhere. He's one of your 5 best.
Right.
I don't know how everybody's benching Emil Wagner right now. Like everything that I've seen says, Gerby Lambert's going to start, or, they're going to put in, Knapp is going to come back and start, all of these different things. But like, how do you bench a guy that played all season and played at a fairly high level? Like I don't know how you bench him right now, unless he is just massively outplayed in the spring and in the fall.
He was literally the most consistent and probably most underrated guy on the offensive side of the ball. He played more snaps than anyone else offensively this year. 973 snaps Emil Wagner played. The only offensive lineman, as it turned out, to start every game for Notre Dame this season. Right. He played 973 snaps. Riley Leonard played 944. Anthony Knapp played the next most at 843. And I'm bringing him up on PFF. The page is not loading right now. I was going to kind of give you an idea of what, some of his how he graded out. The guy was just very consistent. You know how we know he was consistent? Because guess who we very rarely talked about, if talked about at all this year? Emil Wagner. Like, when do you talk about offensive linemen? When they're not playing well. Guess who we didn't talk about? Guess what offensive lineman we talked about less than anybody else? I think it would go Emil Wagner and then Billy Schrouth after that.
Right.
And people are just, Emil Wagner's done. He's not a starter anymore. I don't get that.
Yeah, it's just a hard pill for me to swallow right now. So I'm penciling him in at right tackle. So now you look at, okay, what is Anthony Knapp going to bring to the table? Are they going to move him inside? Are they going to keep him at tackle? I think moving him inside makes a lot of sense. What do they do with Charles Jagasaw? He's going to start somewhere, whether it's at left tackle or whether it's at right guard. Either way, he's going to be a beast. Is Gerby Lambert, is he ready to step into a starting role? I don't know the answer to that. Is he going to be the incumbent to Emil Wagner when he leaves? Is he still one more year away? Because we haven't really heard a whole lot about him right now. We're going to know more in the spring based on where he lines up and what he does in the spring, I think. Because none of these offensive linemen are going to want to sit out in the spring if they're healthy. They're
How
going
could you want to? Because it's going to be a battle. It's going to be a battle the whole spring. And you got to find a way to get yourself in that conversation by the end of spring,
right?
Going into summer.
I just think this is the prime example of the Harry Hiestand, the best 5 are going to play. You're going to find your best 5 linemen because you do have some positional flexibility with some of these guys, right? Charles Jagasaw proved it. He was dominant at left tackle. He was dominant at right guard, right? You have positional flexibility with some of these guys. So depending on who your best 5 are, you can do some different things. So it's who's the best 5.
See,
and then you figure out where they go.
Yeah, and I mean, again, like you've got Coogan and Knapp, who also started for, most of this. Knapp obviously started every game but the championship game, and Coogan started every game.
And Coogan still has a year of eligibility.
And those are 2 guys, again, who you might end up getting spindlered out of this whole deal. where like, because there's just so much talent on that line. When Craig was healthy, there was no doubt that he was the number one center. And I think that the potential for the most physical and potentially best line, like you were talking about the positional flexibility. Now this is just, again, like not anything that we've got to see so far, but based on, who we think this guy could be, like I would say that the combination that potentially intrigues me the most and could potentially move the most mass next year is Ashton Craig at center, Billy Schrouth at left guard, Charles Jagasaw at right guard, Gerby Lambert at left tackle, and Emil Wagner at right tackle. Like, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but that's one that intrigues me the most, that I would have to think is at least a possibility.
Sure. I think the offensive line's in a great spot, Sean. Like, yes, a great spot, and the competition is going to be fierce. And whoever wins those spots, like let's say Gerby Lambert beats out Emil Wagner, you're going to have a pretty stinking good right tackle at that point. You know what I mean? Because I think we know what Emil Wagner brings to the table. It's good. He's consistent. He does his job. He does a good job, right? So if he gets beat out, lock it down. You know what I mean? So the 5 best, let's go. Let's roll. Figure out who those 5 best are, and let's roll, man. Like, and you're going to have a second team left to right that could start at a lot of places. Like exactly. That whole line, like you take the entire second line on paper and you're like, okay, there would be teams that would kill for all 5 of those second string guys to be their starting offensive line. Kill for it.
There's definitely going to be, well, I won't say definitely, but there's a really good chance. I was going to say there's definitely going to be one guy who started a lot of games this year who's not going to start next year. There's at least one, and maybe 2, maybe 3, like depending on how the whole thing shakes out.
Right, because you might get some of these freshmen, freshmen this year that, pop up out of nowhere, or Will Black is obviously really, really, really good, is going to be a true freshman. I hope now they've had some success with true freshmen, obviously. I hope that they're kind of past that. Because it just always makes me nervous when a true freshman is starting on the offensive line. But hey, best man wins. You know what I mean? Like, best man plays. And so if you make that top 5, that's awesome. But like I said, I think the locks for some starting position somewhere is Craig, Schrouth, Jagasaw. Those 3 are locks. And I think and I think Emil Wagner is close. And then you've got one kind of open spot. Like, that's the way I see it.
But you're just going to have some really great competitions.
Yeah. No doubt. That offensively, offensive line and quarterback are going to be obviously the position battles to watch. Like, that's going to be the most fun.
And Irish 24 wants to know who we see as the starting quarterback in Miami. Do they start Steve due to experience, or do they go with the upside of Kenny or CJ?
CJ Carr. That's who I think is going to start. That's who I would start, and that's who I think Notre Dame would start. So it's kind of 2 answers, right? I think CJ Carr is the heir apparent at this point. I think that he has the most upside. He has the most talent. He reads the defenses the best out of those 3 guys.
He has the strongest arm.
He's got the strongest arm. The ball comes out the best, comes out the quickest. Kenny is 1 step below that, or maybe even a half step below that. And obviously he brings to the table some athleticism and things. Look, CJ can move the chains. Kenny is a little bit more dynamic with his legs. But CJ throws a better ball. And then it's Steve. Like that's the order, in my opinion.
I don't disagree with that at all.
Trying to be as because we're going to get asked this a lot, and that's fine.
I know.
It is what it is. It's fine.
We are going to get asked this a lot. Everyone's going to talk about this a lot. And there's going to be a lot of heated arguments. We're going to have the CJ camp. We're going to have the Kenny camp. We're going to of course, the very vocal Angeli camp,
For sure. I will let Joe say this. You can go ahead and read that one. I think this is pretty spot on.
Joe says CJ. Oh, It's easier to me. CJ, I like Steve, but it's year 3 and he still has terrible pocket awareness. Indy can't win a natty with that type of quarterback. I mean, there are a lot of people. I won't say a lot of people. I actually saw someone ask the other day if they should have benched Riley Leonard at halftime and went with Steve and Jelly in the second half.
No.
No. I mean, no. You realize that if Abdul Carter wasn't playing with one arm, we're having a lot different conversation about Steve Angeli today.
Mm-hmm.
And we might be having a lot different conversation overall because Notre Dame might not have won that game. Because if Abdul Carter is not playing with one arm, Steve Angeli gives Penn State the football on that strip sack because of that lack of pocket awareness and the fact that he eats a lot of sacks because of his lack of mobility.
Yep.
And Abdul Carter was not able to wrestle that ball away. Credit Notre Dame's offensive line. I've seen both Schrouth and Wagner credited for recovering the fumble. Like I said, I never could definitely figure it out, but one of those two guys got it. So, but it's a lot different conversation. Yes, Angeli ultimately helped Notre Dame get their first points of the game by getting them into field goal range, but he almost had the biggest disaster of the game as well. If one of those offensive linemen doesn't wrestle that ball away from one-armed Carter there. So
people don't say that enough. It's never brought up, right? That part is never brought up. And I get it because Steve did a great job on that drive, except for those two plays. So people don't really bring that up because it doesn't fit their narrative. So that's fine. I get it. The result was a field goal, and that's what they needed. But that's not sustainable for an entire season, let alone an entire game. Guys, I hate to break it to you, but if he had to play the rest of the game, that game does not go the way of Notre Dame. It just doesn't. I'm sorry.
He's probably sacked at least 5 more times.
Yeah, Penn State was in a prevent defense. The underneath slants and whatnot were wide open, right? Because they were playing prevent. They were back. It was wide open. So it was one read and go. It wasn't a going through progressions situation.
Irish Eye says his worry is if CJ starts, Steve or Kenny leave or both. So
okay,
are you gonna give the job to the guy who doesn't deserve it just to try to keep a depth chart? Like, the best guy has to get the job. Like,
Absolutely.
this is why you're not going to the transfer portal and bringing in another quarterback this offseason. It's because of CJ Carr. Let's just be honest and call it what it is. People can talk about Steve Angeli and what else. It's because of CJ Carr. That's one of the you fully expect that one of these guys is going to transfer. And maybe both.
Okay.
The best guy has to get the job. And if that's what happens, that's what happens. And you do still have Rizak as on your roster right now, and you have Tyler Buckner as well. And I've said
and
this
you got
before.
you got the Ebert kid.
Yeah, and you got the Hebert kid, freshman coming in
Mm-hmm.
as well. So, I mean, that's 4 quarterbacks potentially right there. And I've said before, I think the only way that Tyler Buckner gets moved back to quarterback is if that scenario happens, that you lose both of those guys to the transfer portal if CJ is the starter. And we are both very confident that that's the way it's going to end up.
I would encourage people to go back and watch the spring game from this year. Just go back and watch the spring game. Watch what all the quarterbacks did in the spring game. I'll just leave it at that. And if you still come away with being in whatever camp that isn't CJ Carr, then I don't know what to tell you. I guess that's just where I'm at.
Stymie wants to know about the drive to Atlanta. How many Guns N' Roses albums? We ended up not going the Guns N' Roses route. Turned out the rental car that we had, it was a Ford Expedition. That thing was massive, but it came with satellite radio. So we listened to kind of an 80s mix going down, and we listened to, we had a Tom Petty marathon coming back.
We did. It was the Tom Petty channel. And we wore that one out. I mean, that was on for quite a while when my daughter wasn't on the phone. So
yeah. Is Brian Kelly, all things considered, happy or unhappy with the Irish loss?
He's ecstatic. Are you kidding me? How would he not be happy? How would he not be happy?
Yeah,
I will
he
just
gets to
that.
say, "See, I told you so."
Yeah, exactly. For at least another year. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
it's kind of like the 72 Dolphins, right? Like they're happy as soon as the NFL doesn't have an undefeated team.
Popping a cork, drinking his champagne.
Right. That's Brian Kelly. As soon as Notre Dame is not the national champion, he's popping that champagne. Like that is where he's at right now. So he's definitely happy.
Irish Eye says he thinks it's going to be Kenny. Again, there's going to be a camp of a lot of people. Like everyone's, it's going to be split into 3 camps, and we're going to get to have these arguments all spring. And
then 1 or 2 of whoever does not get the starting job is going to leave. Like everybody just needs to prepare themselves. Whatever camp you're in, prepare yourself that your guy could be in the transfer portal as soon as spring is over. Just prepare yourself for it so you're not surprised. Just think to yourself, my guy's going. So then you can be a fan of whatever team they end up on, where they will, by the way, probably start. Because all 3 of those guys have the talent to be a starting quarterback in Division I football.
Right.
So they're probably going to start wherever they go, and they're going to make some NIL money, and it's going to be great. And you can cheer for that guy there, whether it's CJ Carr, whether it's Kenny Minchie, whether it's Steve Angeli. Just prepare yourself that one of those guys is going to go. That's where I'm at, because I don't think there's any way that all 3 of them are still on the roster come fall.
I wouldn't think so either.
It's just not reality. It's just not reality.
Salty says there are disturbing whispers that Texas is preparing a large NIL package for the Great One. How real is this threat? Will I be committing ritual suicide? He says.
Look, Notre Dame was in the national championship game. They've got guys, right? We've talked about that forever. And so when you've got guys, you have a target on your back, whether as a team or the individuals. You want teams to be coming after your guys. That means they're really good. So, yeah, it's a real threat. Now, I don't know the specifics of whether Texas is or Texas A&M or whoever. Cool. Like, it doesn't matter. What I'm saying is people are going to come after your guys, just like people came after Marcus Burton, right? Just to throw a wrench into things and talk basketball. I know for a fact he was offered a bag of money to go to a team in the South. Okay? Turned it down to stay at Notre Dame. It's going to happen every single year to your studs. It's going to happen. So just anticipate it, expect it, and be happy when they're still on Notre Dame's roster.
And, look, like I know there's been talk about, Jeremiah Love and some schools coming after him, and the fact that, look, Jeremiah Love, I think, has been made very whole by Under Armour, with the NIL deal that he got from them. And if someone's coming at, obviously Jaden Greathouse is from like right there, in that Austin area. And I think that Notre Dame has NIL money too. Let's just put it that way. And I think that they're going to do everything that they can to try to make sure that he stays around here. And at this point, like everyone, talks about degrees and all that kind of stuff. Jaden Greathouse is only a year away from having a Notre Dame degree now at this point. So, so like how much that factors into a guy's decision as well when you're that close, because they put you on a 3-year track to get those degrees when you come in. So
correct. And look, if guys leave, they leave. I mean, it just is what it is. That's college football nowadays. Now, I think guys at Notre Dame are less likely, like studs who are playing, are less likely to leave Notre Dame maybe than other places. But it could still happen. Like, you just need to understand that this is what college football is right now. And anybody at any time could leave. You know what I mean? Like, anybody at any time could leave in the offseason. So just prepare yourself for that.
Josh is asking about if there is still a spring portal window. There is. It is smaller than it used to be, but there is still a spring transfer portal window that is in the middle of April. There was initially talk about doing away with the spring portal, but they decided to keep it for at least another year. This is probably going to be something that keeps being addressed every year.
So, interesting point, Sean. It's April 16th through the 25th.
There you go.
Notre Dame's spring game
days.
is April 26th.
Yeah.
So, if somebody's leaving, they're leaving before the spring game occurs, which I think is very interesting.
Well, they can enter their name anyway.
That's what I'm saying. Well, but people are
but that also gives
portal on a regular basis.
But that also gives, these guys the full length of spring practice to find out exactly where they're going to be on the depth chart and what their future looks like at Notre Dame. So they could come right down to the wire the day before the blue gold game and enter their name in the portal. And that might make the spring game look a lot different.
and at that point, once you get to the spring game, like nothing is going to be decided in the spring game. You know what I mean? Like the writing's going to be on the wall for what the depth chart is going to look like, whether it's obvious to us or not. It will be very obvious at that point for the kids, for the kids that are on the team, the coaches, and all of that. So,
a couple good ones here. That
it's just funny to me how uninformed some people are, but I'll just leave it at that.
Vince, come on, man, throwing darts out here.
So I didn't say anybody in particular.
Do you think Notre Dame goes and gets another portal receiver?
No, I think they got two,
pretty
right?
Solid where they are right now.
They're very happy with Malachi Fields, and I thought there was another one as well. My mom, I just haven't had a chance to even think about transfers right now since we just got through the national championship game. I'm gonna have to study the list a little more, but I thought they got another guy. I could be wrong, but they're very happy with Malachi Fields. I can tell you that for sure.
Right.
And look, there's talent in that room. There's talent in the Notre Dame room right now.
Yeah, I mean, you still got Jaden Greathouse, Jordan Faison, KK Smith, Micah Gilbert, Cam Williams, and Logan Saldati.
Yeah.
I'm trying to see, and I mean that's obviously assuming none of them.
Yeah, with the Wisconsin,
but as of right now, that's what you've got. So
yeah, Will Pauling, thank you guys. Will Pauling from Wisconsin, thank you, appreciate that. Yeah. So, and he's going to be a depth piece. I don't think he's an automatic starter, to be honest with you. But they're going to be fine at wide receiver. I would be surprised if they went, unless some real top echelon guy is out there. I don't see that happening. Josh, I was not referring to you.
Do you think there is any chance Benjamin Morrison comes back?
No. I don't. As much as look, if a talent like Benjamin Morrison wants to come back, you welcome him with open arms. Obviously, I think that Notre Dame did a great job with Leonard Moore and what he was able. Look, Leonard Moore is not a freshman All-American if Benjamin Morrison doesn't get injured, right? I'm not saying they're ready to move on from Benjamin Morrison, but I think they're in a good position to be okay without him. But if he wants to come back, you're like, yeah, let's go. Let's run it back. You know what I mean? I just don't think it's going to happen. I just think it's time for him to move on unless he isn't getting what he needs from the NFL.
I just think, yeah. And that's
the biggest question mark. And I don't know that
he's getting because of the injury, I mean, it looks like he's moving around. Okay. Like in the, Here Come the Irish, they showed him going to a basketball game with Riley Leonard and hanging out and all that kind of stuff.
He looked good walking around. I saw him on the sidelines. He went out and I think he was talking to his parents and on the side where I was standing there by the tunnel. He's walking around great. Obviously he's not playing. So I don't know where he is.
He's had one major injury with the hip, but remember he came into the season after having some off-season shoulder surgery as well. So like medicals will be a question for the NFL, but I just think that the risk of, more injury coming back, if you've got the kind of interest that you can go out and get paid, you start getting paid right away. If you're Benjamin Morrison, I think that's what it comes down. Unless, you end up being, like a day, if they think that you're going to be a day 3 guy, that's to me where there's some possibility that he does come back, because if it's day 3, that's not like what you would consider as a future pro, quote unquote life-changing type money. Like that is the kind of the kind of money you're getting there as a day 3 guy is the kind of money that would be easy to match from an NIL standpoint, much easier to match from an NIL standpoint to stick around and play for another year.
Yeah, it is fascinating to me.
And he hasn't declared yet, and he's got until the end of the week as well to declare.
Is that when the draft, like you have to declare for the draft by the end of the week?
Yeah. Underclassmen have to declare by the 24th. Yeah, which is Friday.
And that's just for the 2 teams that were in the playoff or in the championship, right? Everybody else is already declared, correct? Because I thought I saw a list of everybody that declared.
I think it's all under. I don't know. I just know that the 24th is the deadline
for Notre Dame. Yeah, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yep.
Speaking of which, Savage wants to know, do you think that if BMO had been healthy, Smith catches that ball on 3rd and 11?
I don't know. I don't want to speculate on that. I don't, because Christian Gray's a really good DB.
I just want to say this. Like, this is going to be a little change of subject, but like what was the whole narrative about Jaden Greathouse in the Penn State game? Well, those guys just fell down, right?
Right.
Not that Benjamin Morrison made a double move at the line of scrimmage and made another little juke move on the safety after he got into the open field, right? Like the move at the line of scrimmage, the Penn State DB falls down, and that's how he got wide open. Well, how the hell do you think Smith got open? Because he made a move, right?
A hell of a move.
But Christian Gray didn't fall down. He moved him enough, though, to give him the separation that he needed to make a catch, and that's what Jaden Greathouse did as well. But nobody wants to credit Jaden Greathouse. They all want to say, oh, DB just fell down. He fell down because Jaden Greathouse made a move. Jeremiah Smith got open because he made a move on Christian Gray. They showed a little slant, and he went instead. And that's what got him the separation. But Christian Gray didn't fall down, so it looked a little like, think of how different that would have looked if Christian Gray had fallen down and he wasn't even downfield, even close to coverage there. But does Benjamin Morrison make the play? At the end of the day, it's a one-on-one play. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
Look, Christian Gray isn't great on off-man coverage. He's just not. And that's what they put him in that particular scenario. He's much better at press man, being up close, battling, that kind of a deal. But since he had no safety help, they put him in off man. And it's a lot easier to make a play on a guy when it's off man like that. And Jeremiah Smith did. Like, I don't know if somebody else would have made a better play. I don't know. And I'm not going to speculate that they would have, because that's not fair to Christian Gray. You know what I mean? And so I'm not going to do that. But I think he was put in a position to not maximize his talent. That's what I'll say. And
I mean, I wasn't thrilled about the fact that he was defending him. If you know that you're going, man to man, and you're bringing 7, and you're basically man to man with no safety help. Christian Gray is not who I would have wanted on Jeremiah Smith.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all.
Yeah.
I just think he was.
It's not a shot at Christian Gray. Yeah. It's just that this is
correct.
It's an elite receiver, as we all know. He's an all-world guy, and it's if I'm not going to give him any safety help, that's not the matchup that I want over there. I want Leonard Moore over there.
Yep. And look, Jeremiah Smith did a great job of pressing inside and then making a move to the outside. He did a great job, and Christian Gray just he didn't bite, but I mean he did. He got his hips turned. It was a good move. Like people don't understand the nuances of that route. He did a great job of moving his guy inside, moving Christian Gray inside, and then hitting it to the outside. He just did a great job of that. So, it's unfortunate. It's just unfortunate. Whoa,
Dolly Madison. Thank you very much for the super chat. Hi, guys. Happy to see you again. Great season. Looking forward to next year. Onward to victory. Go Irish. Thank you very much, Dolly. Appreciate it.
Coming in strong. Man.
I love your snack cakes.
You're not wrong.
Vince, do you think they need to push the college football playoff to an earlier date. It's so late. Only 4 NFL teams left.
Hey, listen, I think the calendar should be looked at just to kind of see where things are. The problem is, under the current format, having those traditional bowl games are always on January 1st. And so that kind of sets your calendar, right? And if that's going to be that round, okay, you're not really going to have much of a choice. You're going to go to this point in the calendar every single time. It might be a day off or a day off here or there, right? Because the calendar obviously changes every year. But if you're going to have those 4 games, you're going to have 3 on New Year's Day and you're going to have 1 on New Year's Eve. Everything is set from that date moving forward. You know what I mean? So it's going to be tough. Like if you want these multi-round playoffs, then this is what you're going to get. I don't know.
And they knew what they were getting into when they did this.
Sure.
They knew that they'd be going deeper, but I do think everything is going to be looked at. As we've talked about before, there's only 1 year remaining on the current college football playoff TV contract. So to change anything for next year, there has to be a unanimous vote. I think it's 11 total people, the conference commissioners, and Pete Bavacqua, counts in that as well. It has to be unanimous to change anything next year. But,
right.
The SEC and the Big Ten want expansion, whether it's 14 teams or 16 teams. And I feel like 2 things at a minimum probably need to happen. You need to push the start of the season up by 1 week. And the conferences are also going to have to decide, do you want to keep the conference championship games? Because, and then like the factor that you bring in as well, you can still involve those bowls probably more on a rotational basis, if you're locked in to New Year's, then, like you said, like it kind of sets from there. If that's what you're going to go with every year, if that's where you're going to play your semifinals, or I guess that would have been the quarterfinals, right? New Year's. Yeah. There's so many rounds in this thing, but I mean, there's a lot of rounds, and there are a lot of games. If you
make it all the way to the end, there's a fatigue factor there. There's no doubt about it. You know what I mean? Like there's a fatigue factor in the people following the game, like the following teams. You know what I mean? Like you should see some of these beat reporters that have followed Notre Dame to all 4 games in the playoffs, man. Like they're shot, like they're done, physically, emotionally, the whole thing. And, you tack on the fact that you had a terrorist attack at one of the games. You had, unseasonable weather.
I didn't mean to laugh at the terrorist attack. That's not what I was laughing at.
But I'm just saying, you throw in all these extra
the things
factors.
that happen. Yeah.
I guess the people that flew out yesterday out of Atlanta were stuck in the airport for like 12 hours, because of all the cancellations. Like, traveling takes a lot out of you, man. Like I was exhausted last night when we got back and all we did was sit there and drive. But like, you know what I mean? Like I was exhausted. So, it's long, it's arduous, but it's something that you're going to have to get used to if you want to win a national championship, because guys, I hate to break it to you, it's not going to get shorter. Like it's going to get longer. Like the only thing that's going to happen, I guess, is they're going to probably eliminate the first round bye. So everybody's playing in the first round. It's
but again, if they do that, then are they going to get rid of the conference champion? But that's going to be an individual conference thing, because like I'll see comments, well, the NCAA needs to do this. You've got to remember the NCAA has 0 to do with any of this format. It's run by the college football playoff. It is determined by the conference commissioners and to some extent by TV as well. The NCAA has nothing to do with it. The NCAA just tries to make rules that everybody,
that everybody
follow
breaks
when they try to enforce them. But like things are changing rapidly. That's the only thing that the NCAA does is try to impose rules and enforce the rules. They have no say over any of this format, anything in any of this. So
Joe has a question in there, and I don't want to pull it up yet because we will talk about that in rapid fire. So don't worry. The locker room situation after the game.
We're gonna get into the locker room thing.
Yeah, that's right. We will definitely talk about that for sure.
What are the priorities for spring practice and when does it start? Salty, if Notre Dame had won the national championship, I guarantee you, if someone else hadn't asked this question Tuesday morning at Marcus Freeman would have had a press conference the morning after the championship game. I would have asked about what the spring schedule might look like, but that's not something you ask minutes after they just lost in the national championship game. So didn't bring that up after the game, but we don't know. It's going to be kind of wait and see. We again, one of the many discussions that we had, I would have to think that, maybe they do it a little bit later than usual. Cause like the last couple years under Marcus Freeman, they've had a couple practices before spring break in early March. And then they
sometimes
sent them
only
away.
One, but it
was like one or two. And then they sent them away for spring break.
Yeah.
And then they came back and finished the rest of the spring. I wouldn't be shocked. And I'm not saying this is going to happen, but again, as deep as they went, and you still have to get, you've got to start your off season. You've got to give them a couple weeks off to just let their bodies, and let them get away from it and everything else. But then you've got to start your winter conditioning program, which has to happen before spring football even starts, so that's got to get started at some point. And then like, I wouldn't be shocked if spring practice just happens, at some point later in March than we've gotten used to the last couple years. And, it gets condensed a little, you're still going to get on all your practices and all that kind of stuff. But I wouldn't be shocked if it looks at least a little bit different, starts a little bit later than usual, but we don't know exactly when right now.
Yep. Completely agree with that. Looks like spring break is March 8th through the 16th. I would not be surprised, if spring ball started after that. Because that'll give you like 6 weeks basically to get spring ball in if they waited, knowing that the spring game is April 26th. So that's what I would do, because they're going to need some time. And my guess is some of the off-season conditioning will be not 100% attended on purpose. Like some of these guys are going to get a break, like a legit break. But not everybody needs a legit break right now. You know what I mean? So like some guys, I think they're going to have them in the weight room. They're going to be doing stuff, but not everybody. And it won't be full go. And you and I talked about this in the car on the way home. I also think
one of the many things.
You look comfortable.
Somebody else was saying that. I've got this little. It's nice. It's like this little wraparound couch in the corner of my room. It's like the best. It's the best setup I've had in a long time in a room.
Great.
It's better than either of the rooms we stayed in on the trip. I'll tell you that much.
All right. Well, you weren't cuddling with a 17-year-old, so
true.
But I think that spring ball for certain players will. I'm not optional, but like it'll be very light.
It was limited for Howard Cross last year.
Yes,
like the guy.
And I think that number grows this spring based on how late they went into the season. You know what I mean? Like, I just think it's going to be limited for a lot of guys, and you're going to see some guys not participate in the spring game that you might want to see, and I think that's okay.
Full Life says, is it odd that I'm curious what Sean writes down after a question? I actually jot down the question because when we post the podcast later, I put in what the topics are. So when it's a mailbag, I've got to keep track of what the topics are. So
very impressed with how detailed you are in the description, because I'm not that detailed when I do those. So
Vince is like cleats. Offensive line.
Let's keep it nice and simple.
Jersey colors. So, questions about both running backs. Outbound wants to know if Jadarian Price could transfer. And there was another question earlier. Travis said, I heard someone say Love is upset and threatened to transfer. Any validity? So, your thoughts on those two, Vince?
I'm not sure what he would be upset about. Maybe like the lack of carries in the championship game, I guess. I guess. I don't know what he's upset about, number one. Number two, I have gotten to the point in my life where I don't Nothing's going to surprise me. Like anybody could transfer at any moment. And I'd be like, huh, well, that's interesting. And then we talk about it and we move on. Like nobody's off the table. So could Jadarian Price want to leave and be the lead back someplace? Yeah, I could see that happening. Would he want to stay and be part of the best 1-2 punch in college football? I could see that happening too. You know what I mean? So again, just nothing surprises me at this point. That's the best way I can put it.
I mean, look at Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson as an example. Like that split worked out for both of those guys, and both of those guys are going to play in the NFL. Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price are both going to play in the NFL. And while, Love is getting more carries, but their carries are relatively similar. They're both in there quite a bit, and it benefits both them and the team that they're splitting the reps the way they are. Because like if Love doesn't bang up his knee in the USC game, he's at 100%, and the way they split the reps during the season kept both of those guys ready to go in December. And like if I'm Jadarian Price, like as a running back, because there's always the conversation. Like, would you rather take the hits and all the pounding in college, or do you save it till you get to the NFL? Since the shelf life of a running back is so limited once you get to the NFL anyway. Like if I'm either one of these guys, Love or Price, and I know this was a question with Jeremiah Love's mom coming out of high school. Like, you want to take as few hits as possible in college so you can save it for when you're getting paid to do it. And so for either one of these guys, they both got NIL opportunities. They're both getting to contribute. They both got to contribute on a team that just played for the national championship. Now, what goes on between their ears, I mean, that's for them personally, but like if I were them, I would think that I've got a pretty close to perfect situation the way they did the thing up, because they both got to make plenty of plays this year. And again, they're both going to play in the NFL.
Absolutely. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. Jeremiah Love overall, I'm not saying, what was it, 4 carries for 3 yards or whatever it was in the championship game. I'm not saying that's what he wanted. I'm saying overall, season-wise, he doesn't want to be like just, run into the ground. Like that's not what he wants. That's not what his family wants. He wants to be somewhat fresh when he's ready to go to the NFL, and that's a thing. Like that's legit. You know what I mean? So everybody that's like, he needs the ball more. He needs the ball more. He doesn't need the ball more, and he doesn't want the ball more. Again, I'm not talking about the championship game. I'm talking overall averages.
Overall, yeah.
Right. You know what I mean? Like there's a reason.
He's completely fine, I think, with the 11, 12 carries a game that he's getting.
I do too. And with the possibility of him just breaking one and things like that's enough. Like that's enough. You don't need more than that, especially when you have a pretty dynamic guy in Jadarian Price.
Is the schedule next year really more difficult? Miami, Texas A&M, and USC. That's from Trex.
So the 25 schedule, is it more difficult than this past year? So yes, Miami is back on the schedule. Texas A&M is going to be really good. I would hope. I would think. You still have Arkansas on there. You got Boise State on there. You've got USC on there. Like those are all not easy. Look, Boise State was a playoff team, right? Arkansas is not a slouch. It's an SEC team that everybody wants to play, right? Everybody wants to play the SEC. Well, you got Arkansas there. Yeah, Purdue probably won't be very good. USC will be good. I don't know if anybody remembers last time Notre Dame played Navy, they were undefeated, right? So that's Navy. And then look, then you've got, Pitt, Boston College, NC State, Syracuse, middle of the road ACC teams, get it. But no, I think there's definitely some tests on this schedule. I think people forget about Boise State being on the schedule. I think people forget about Arkansas being on the schedule. Still Arkansas, and you still got to go there. You know what I mean? In September, it's not a home game. So that has its issues. But what do you think?
I mean, I think it should be more difficult, but I don't think it's going to be
It's not murderer's row.
Head and shoulders more
Yeah.
difficult. And again, when you look at all the experience that Notre Dame brings back, there's no reason that they shouldn't be in a playoff hunt. Once again, look, I know that Carson Beck is going to Miami, but Miami was basically Cam Ward this year, and I think
Yes,
that played
100%.
out. I mean, that's why they didn't make the playoff, because they weren't more than what the quarterback was. And Carson Beck is a good quarterback.
He's not a great,
but he's not the same kind of quarterback that can carry you the way that Cam Ward did. So look at Florida State last year compared to what Florida State was this year. We all thought that they were going to be, at least a 9-3 team, I think, coming into this season, and that completely fell off. So how good is Boise State going to be next year with no Ashton Genty and some other losses that they're going to have? There's always going to be some turnover, and there's always going to be a team that's better than you thought they were going to be, like Army and Navy this year, and there's going to be some teams like Florida State that are worse. But, I mean, to answer the question, the schedule will be at least a little bit tougher. But, if Notre Dame gets through it in November and it's looking pretty good, then people will just start taking shots at it and say, well, you need to be in a conference because
blah, blah, blah. Yeah, they definitely don't. And we're not going to have that conversation. But I think this is a more well-rounded schedule, right? You don't have any, at the moment, you don't have any MAC teams on your schedule, right? You have one at the moment, group of 5 team on the schedule in Navy. The rest are all Power 5 teams. So, no, I'm sorry, Boise State's group of 5. I apologize. So Navy and Boise are your group of 5 teams. And there's still a game to be TBA, right, as to who they're going to play. Are they just going to do the same thing that they always do and get Stanford on the schedule? Hope not. But, I mean, I don't know the answer to that, right? So, we'll see what happens with that 12th game. But I think overall, whether it is actually harder or not, I think the perception will be that it is harder than last year. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, because, they're not going to lose to a MAC team. That's official.
Yeah, that won't happen. We can guarantee that right now.
Because right now, Stanford has 11 games on the schedule. Just FYI. So,
based on film, do you think Madden Faremo will get serious minutes early in the season?
Man, Faremo's built different, man. Just seeing him in person at some of the practices that we got to see during bowl prep. He's got a little bit of a cast on his wrist right now, probably some preventative or, a cleanup or something along those lines. But that dude is like having a kid that is his age in my own house and then seeing that kid, it's like, okay, that kid's put together. You know what I mean? And I realize my kid's a kicker and that's a different conversation, but I also am around his team all the time too. The kid is built different, man, like built different. And he could get, they're going to lose obviously Jack Kaiser. And if they want to maintain a 5-man rotation, obviously pending anybody transferring, I don't know. He could very easily step in and be that guy. But there's some other linebackers on the roster that might say otherwise to that particular conversation. But he is
something that'll kind of play itself out in the spring. I think he's got a really good opportunity. Like
I do too.
You look at him and you look at Kingston Viliamu Asa, and it's like those are those two dudes, for as young as they are, like you said, they are physically put together, and that's going to give him a really good chance. And the fact that they're doing this rotation, assuming that they do that again next year, because now you've got Drake Bowen with a full year of experience. You've got KVA with a full year of experience. You've got Jaden Osbury with a full year of experience. Jalen Sneed has played a lot more, so like all these guys are a year more experienced, whereas, especially like Bowen and Viliamu Asa, they were the two guys with the least experience coming in, and now they've got a full season, and you can start to figure out in the spring, okay, what can Faremo do? Like what are the things that he can do, some situations where he can be on the field, those kind of things. And I think that you can work him in. And, and another, I'll just mention this. This is something that's still out there, but they're also talking about this 5 years of eligibility thing, just like 5 flat years of eligibility with no redshirting anymore. Like, you don't have to worry about redshirt restrictions. Now, it hasn't been passed yet. It's another one of these pieces of legislation that they're still figuring out if that's what they want to do. But if they pass it, again, you're not going to have to worry about 4-game limits and all that kind of stuff. You're going to have 5 years to play 5 seasons, barring injuries and that kind of thing. And so, like, you can just get a guy in there and play him as much as you want. You don't have to worry about red shirts if that happens.
Right.
I almost hesitated to say it because that's not official yet, but I'm just saying, there's a really good chance that could end up happening by next year. So
I just hope it doesn't happen by signing day because I need my kid on a roster. But no, I'm just kidding. But no, I think for as far as the Ferramo thing is concerned, here's what I will say: he's guaranteed to be on special teams, and I would not want to be across from him on a kickoff. Like, as he's on the kickoff team, I'm on the return team, and I got to block him coming down full speed. That's a hard pass for me, man. Hard pass.
What's your expectation for the floor next year? Trek says his expectation is hosting another playoff game. See that? I mean, this is like the other side of getting to the playoff. Now it's the expectation every year, regardless.
I think that should be the expectation every single year. I think the peanut butter and jelly time says, do you think they could be a better team next year based on the talent you have coming back? Could be. I still need to see what this iteration kind of looks like in the spring, and then, of course, in the fall as well. But on paper, they got a ton of talent coming back. And I really like the pieces that I think are going to slide into, starting roles or whatever the case may be. I think I'm okay with that being the floor. I'm okay with hosting a playoff game being the floor. Like, I love the fact that Notre Dame has the opportunity to host a game every year, possibly.
I'm okay with that. Being in the playoff is the floor.
Okay, that's fine.
Like, because it is worth noting that you're going to start a quarterback next year, and you've got a grand total of 1 start in the quarterback room as of right now.
That's fair.
So, as talented and everything else, that is still the biggest question: is there's going to be an inexperienced quarterback starting next year? They're going to have a ton of experience around them, but there's going to be an inexperienced quarterback starting on day 1 down in Miami. That's going to be a huge question.
I will say that agree with you on making the playoff should be the basement every single year. That's your goal, right? Make the playoff. Because if you're in the playoff, you got a chance. You know what I mean? And I think like a caveat to that goal would be hosting, obviously. But I think making the playoff is the goal every single year, no doubt.
Right.
And no, they're not going to have a 2-quarterback system. That's not going to happen.
Please, really? Did we really need to go there? All right, Vince, are you ready for rapid fire?
Man, rapid fire after dark. Let's go, baby.
So a lot of people, questions about the defensive coordinator popping in, and that's kind of why I just kind of wanted to keep pushing forward and get to this. We will start with that. Al Golden is leaving Notre Dame to go back to the Cincinnati Bengals as defensive coordinator. You surprised at all by this move?
A little bit. I mean, obviously not after the last week of talk, because, again, just like with the players, anybody could leave at any time, and I'm just trying to get used to it. I am a little bit surprised. He just signed an extension, all of that kind of stuff.
A year ago. He signed an extension a year ago. Though.
But it was a 4-year extension. So you figure you had him wrapped up for a little bit. So I'm a little bit surprised. Obviously, his eyes are on the NFL. Like, he wants to go back to the NFL, and that's his prerogative. That's fine. So I'm a little bit surprised, but at the same time, it's not realistic to think that you're going to be able to keep this entire staff together after a run to the national championship. That's not realistic.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, look, he was a position coach in the NFL for 4 years. Before that, he was a head coach for 10 years, a head coach in college. So he went from being a head coach in college to a position coach in the NFL. And he didn't have the opportunity in those 4 years to become a coordinator. So, like he takes an NFL system to college to prove that he could run that system. And that's what he did. And I do find some irony in the fact that he left a Super Bowl team 3 years ago to come to college to be a coordinator. And now 3 years later, he's leaving a team that lost in the college football national championship game to go back to the NFL. But, look, one of the biggest knocks that Brian had on Golden that first season was the fact that, maybe, he's trying to scheme a little bit too much and show people what he could do and all that kind of stuff. Well, 3 years later, he obviously showed people what he can do and that he can run that system, and he could do it with college kids as well. And I think that especially, like the fact that he's going back to Cincinnati where there is so much familiarity and where, yes, he does have roots and still owns a house and all those different things. Look, not everyone wants to coach in college, and like getting that, like he earned that extension that he got last year, but those extensions, sometimes are for more than, just about, it's like they're messages that you send with extensions, both, showing Al Golden that he's valued and also messages, to recruits and all those different kind of things. But look, again, like not everyone wants to coach in college is what it comes down to. Jeff Hafley left a head coaching job at Boston College to become a defensive coordinator with the Green Bay Packers. I think if you put a lie detector test on a lot of these guys, a lot of them would tell you, like if they had their choice with everything that's going on right now with the landscape and everything else of NIL and transfer portal and all that kind of stuff, there's a lot less things you got to deal with in the NFL. It's literally just football. You don't have to worry about 20-hour rules and guys going to class and doing all this different kind of stuff. And, Al Golden is a heck of a defensive coach, and he's earned his way back to the NFL. And if ultimately that's what he wants to do, maybe he wants to be an NFL head coach someday, like Tommy Rees. And I saw somebody say today, you're going to get head-to-head matchups twice a year between Tommy Rees, offensive coordinator in Cleveland, and Al Golden, defensive coordinator in Cincinnati. So,
yes, you are.
Power to it.
Should be great.
So, a few NFL insiders reported that Golden was the top candidate for the job right after Notre Dame's national championship game loss Monday night. Do you have any problem with the timing of when these reports came out?
It just made it so obvious that he had already interviewed, and it was pretty much a done deal at that point. You know what I mean? Because I guess I look at it as a glass half full situation. These NFL guys sat on this information at least until the game was over.
Right.
So at least give them credit for that. Like, they didn't have to.
Yeah, they could have said it before the game. Yeah. And then it's even more of a distraction. Yep. It is a distraction at that point. They were under no obligation to sit on it, but they did. They at least waited until the game was over. Yeah, that's right.
I give them credit, because at first I was going to take this in as a negative way. Like, really, you couldn't even wait like the next day? But you know what? They clearly had this information before 5 minutes before the end of the national championship game.
Right.
They could have broke it at any time, and they didn't. And you know what? There is still some integrity left in this line of work. So I will give them credit for that.
I do as well. That's my thinking exactly, is they obviously had this information, probably days in advance, at least that, at the very least, Al Golden was going to interview. Like, it had been out there. There had been rumblings, there had been some smoke coming up, and again, like whoever gave him the information probably did so, with the stipulation, whether it was an agent or someone with the Bengals or whoever it was, look, you can't say anything, before the game is over.
Right.
Monday,
but they listened.
Coaching in a championship.
But they listened. Like, wow.
Yeah. That's right. So, some follow-ups with this now. Do you buy or sell, first of all, Mike Mickens getting promoted to defensive coordinator?
I mean,
that was a heavier sigh than I thought that there would be.
Well, I'm looking at the question here as well from Brian, and he's wanting to know how long it's going to take to pull the trigger and all that. If he's your guy, right? Because look, Marcus Freeman has known that Al Golden was going to leave for a while now, right? And he has very publicly said that Mike Mickens is ready to be a defensive coordinator. If that's the route that you're going to take, let's just do it. Like, do it. Just announce it, do it. You know what I mean? You don't have to go through the vetting process. He's already on staff. let's turn the page to finding his replacement as a position coach. You know what I mean? Like that's where I'm at. Okay. If he's not the guy, okay, go find the guy that you want, but he has to have already been looking, again, not shirking his duties, getting ready for the championship game. But as you well know, as anybody knows, you've always got a short list of coaches that you want to contact if an opening happens on your staff. And so I'm sure he's had his agent reach out to agents and, that kind of stuff to gauge interest if that's the route that he wants to go. If it's Mickens, it needs to happen soon. Like, that's the way I feel. Like, just do it. Show confidence in the guy.
I agree. Because look, Marcus Freeman said last season, and I'm talking about the 2023 season, he was asked about Mike Mickens, not the 2024 season. He was asked more than a year ago about Mike Mickens being ready to be a defensive coordinator. And he said at that point, more than a year ago, that Mike Mickens was ready to be a defensive coordinator. And he has shown himself to be both an elite recruiter of talent and, have a great eye for talent, which Marcus Freeman has also, praised quite a bit, just really throughout this season as well, both the eye for the talent, the ability to develop it. And he obviously has a really good, mind for the game as well. And, look, I think Mike Mickens is going to be very sought after, and Marcus Freeman has been with this guy since they were at Cincinnati together. So either he knows that he's ready to be the guy or he doesn't, so like, I don't think that this is a very hard decision for Marcus Freeman.
I completely agree. And they're like best friends too. So like, let's go. Let's just do it. And I think Mike Mickens is probably ready. Obviously, I don't know.
They've given him all these other titles, right?
Correct.
And they've given him some pay raises as well.
Right.
And you do that to keep him from going out someplace.
100%.
And so if you don't give him the job, someone else is going to make him the offer at some point.
That's exactly right.
Right. And again, you either know he's the guy or
right.
So I completely buy it. It seems like a slam dunk to me. I guess that's the wrong sport, but it seems like a lock to me. But Salty also wants to know, hearing anything that suggests any additional coaches could leave for other opportunities.
I'm not hearing anything specifically, but they didn't call me and let me know. So I can tell you that there's a lot of coaches on the staff that are going to have interest from other schools or even the NFL. That's always it just like I said about the players being in demand from other teams. Well, so is the coaching staff. Coaching staff's going to be in demand too. And
you just went to a national championship game, and everyone loves Marcus Freeman's culture.
Right.
Like, he's sought after, and everyone on his staff is going to be sought after, just like Al Golden.
Right.
By the way, absolutely. I told you there was at some point, it's been a few weeks, there was a couple questions Marcus Freeman got about Al Golden. Now, am I reading something into it? I don't know. But at the time, just the way Marcus Freeman answered the question, I felt like I feel like this whole thing with Cincinnati has been brewing for a while. So anyone who wants to pin, performance in the national championship game on the fact that Al Golden is taking a job, like, I think he won a couple games after this stuff started popping up because the Bengals knew they were firing their defensive coordinator. And it's not like Zach Taylor doesn't have Al Golden's cell phone number and can call him anytime that he wanted since he was on the staff before. Right. So I think that Al Golden won a couple playoff, helped Notre Dame win a couple playoff games after this interest with the Cincinnati Bengals came up.
Nobody in the Goog was surprised by today's information or the information that came out after the game was over on Monday.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Absolutely. Salty's asking, some defensive coordinators like Knowles are known to have defensive schemes that take more than one season to fully teach. If Mickens becomes defensive coordinator, would that happen?
If Mickens becomes defensive coordinator, I don't think a whole lot changes.
I wouldn't think so either. Like, this is the system that he's coached in for 3 years.
Correct. They're not going to change a bunch of terminology. They're not going to change, a lot of philosophy. There's going to be maybe some play calling differences, as every play caller is different. But I don't think that you're going to see a whole lot of difference between the two. I just don't. Because Mike Mickens' hand has been into the defense for a while now, right? He's not just a position coach. He's the pass game coordinator, defensive pass game coordinator. So his hand has been in on this, right? And he coaches these guys to play man-to-man on a regular basis. So you're not going to see a lot of difference, I wouldn't think, if he ends up getting the job.
I wouldn't think so either. Like you might see some hybrid of, maybe what Marcus Freeman was doing at Cincinnati and what Al Golden was doing. But I mean, you would assume that after 3 years, Mike Mickens has a really firm grasp on the concepts that Al Golden was operating with here in this system in the last 3 years. If anything, maybe there's some things that you can simplify a little bit. I don't know, but I wouldn't think that you're going to see many drastic changes with the system that they've been playing, because that's what Mike Mickens has been coaching in.
Yeah, you'll see a lot of similarities. Yeah.
All right, we're going to get to, I guess you want to just get to the post-game locker room thing right now?
Sure, why not?
So USA Today writer Dan Wolken took issue with some things inside the Notre Dame locker room after Monday's championship game. He posted this on X. Quote, bizarre scenes from the Notre Dame locker room. Players yelling at reporters, coaches warning people not to ask certain questions. Amateur hour, end quote. He also posted this as a follow-up. I think that if the locker room is open, which it is for the CFP, reporters should be able to go in there and respectfully ask questions without being sworn at. If a player doesn't want to talk, that's fine, end quote. Okay, so again, that's from Dan Wolken, USA Today. Jack Sobel, blue and gold guy on the Notre Dame beat, reposted Wolken saying this, quote, lot of emotions tonight. Players were distraught. Plenty of them were more than willing to talk to us. And those who wanted to did it with class. Let's have some empathy and give these kids some grace, end quote. So Vince, what do you think of this whole situation?
I think that number one, the locker room should not be open to reporters after a game like this. Shouldn't happen. I disagree with that wholeheartedly. But I also think you don't go up to a kid after the game and start asking him all kinds of questions about what happened when he gave up a big play that decided the game at the end. You just don't do that. I'm sorry. Not in that moment. You don't do that. And
the things, again, like we're kind of trying to piece this together because, like, to kind of lay this out for our listeners, you and I were both at the game, and they have open locker room at the same time the Marcus Freeman, Riley Leonard, Jack Kaiser press conference was going on. So some people were in the locker room. You and I were at the press conference. At the end of the press conference, they announced that there were 4 more minutes for open locker room.
Right.
Which is,
I don't and they weren't close together, by the way. So it would have taken some time to walk out of the interview room to get to the locker room. By the time we would have gotten there would have been like a minute left, and it would have been like, well, what's the point?
Right.
So,
and there, so again, like, we weren't in there. And I'll say this. I agree about basically the bowls. It's their rule that the teams have to do this open locker room. Like during the season, this doesn't happen. I don't think really, I would say a very small percentage of any school around the country is going to have an open locker room, because obviously at Notre Dame, it's Marcus Freeman does his press conference, and then they'll bring players in and they'll stand up at the podium and answer questions in a press conference setting. It used to be several years ago, remember, like they had a big room and they would bring players in and they would kind of scatter around the room. So it was like, it was not open locker room, but it was, a little bit closer because you just had clusters of media around different players, with mics in their face and stuff like that. I'll say this. I was at the 2012 BCS National Championship game, and Notre Dame obviously lost that game. And I went into the locker room afterwards. It was the second open locker room situation I had been in. The first was at the 2005 Fiesta Bowl when Notre Dame lost to Ohio State. But after the BCS National Championship game, to me, it was completely unproductive because there's just the losing team, there's just so
much emotion
going on
raw
in there. Yeah. And it's like, so I decided, like, I don't need to go in there for that again after this game the other night. And if this guy, like, he can paint this like he's the good guy here, and all I'm doing is asking a couple of questions. It's open locker room. Everything is free game. Well, how are you asking these questions? Because like I saw Beefeater say, like, they were asking other guys as well what they thought about Christian Gray's play. And it's like, if that's the angle that you're going to go with, and you've got all this emotion that goes with it, what kind of reaction do you think you're going to get?
Exactly.
Because, I've also heard that Jaden Thomas was sticking up with Christian Gray and was saying something to the effect of, hey, have a heart, man. Like, do you really need to be poking him on this? So, like, Dan Wolken does not have the best reputation. Like, if this was, Stuart Mandel or, like, I'm trying to think, like Bruce Feldman, like, pick your national writer with a pretty good reputation. Like, if it was those kind of guys, then maybe I could buy, this image that's being painted out there that Wolken put out there. But I'm just not buying it because that's not the reputation that this guy has. Your reputation ain't the greatest, Maverick. So, like, reel it in a little bit. But I agree. Like, the bowls are the ones that make these guys do the open locker room. I don't think it's the greatest idea, because for one, like, you're going to get national reporters who are going in there, whether it's after the Orange Bowl or the Sugar Bowl or the Rose Bowl or whatever. Like, you're going to have national reporters going in there who these players are not used to seeing. And all of a sudden they're in their face and they're asking very pointed questions, and they don't know, exactly where these guys are going to go with that. They don't know what their agendas are, So, like, why should they trust that this guy has their best interest at heart? And so that if they don't want to answer it, they don't have to answer it, quite frankly. And he can say, you can do it more respectfully. Again, I wasn't there, so I can't say exactly how it went down, but some of the things that I've heard are that he was not the most respectful in the way he was going about his business.
Agreed. I just, like, you and I were sitting in the press conference, and there's a million questions I would have loved to, like, ask Marcus Freeman or ask Riley Leonard or ask Jack Kaiser, about the game specifically, right? But it's not the time or the place. It's just not. You know what I mean? Like, you have to put your human hat on at some point too. It's not all about the story. It's not all about whatever you're trying to write about. It's also about that these are human beings, right? And they probably just lost. And
I'm not trying to make it like national versus local, but the national guys have not been around these guys, so like they don't care about that. All they care about is the story. That's literally all they care about is the story. They don't care about the emotion of a guy who just gave up a big play in one of the biggest moments of his life. And by the way, I think we should remember, because I saw somebody post this, like, let's not forget that like, has Christian Gray had some ups and downs this year? Yes, but he's also taken the second most snaps of anyone on the defense this year behind Xavier Watts. And because of the fact that you lost a guy like Benjamin Morrison, you had to lean on this guy more, and you had to lean on Leonard more. But, let's not forget Christian Gray made a big defensive play at the end of the Texas A&M game. He made a big play on the 99-yard interception return on a fantastic catch against USC. And, of course, he made arguably the biggest play of the season with the interception that set up the game-winning field goal against Penn State. So, like, you can talk about, like, whether or not he's, great in coverage and, all these different things. But let's not forget this guy made big play after big play this year and helped this team get to the national championship game. Exactly.
And he wasn't asking about any of that, So I just have a problem with, yes, these players are getting paid. No, they're not professional, but they are getting paid. But I wouldn't do that to a professional either. I wouldn't. So it goes both ways. You do have to have a heart, and you have to use it every now and again. That's where I'm at.
Completely agree. Rapid Now Chihuahua wants to know who gives the credentials. It's the college football playoff. They do all the credentialing during the postseason. Excuse me. For Notre Dame home games, Notre Dame is doing the
now. They will sometimes check with Notre Dame and to see if has this group been following Notre Dame? Are they upbeat on the beat? That kind of crap. Yes. But there were also some people in the press box that probably had no business being in the press box. I'll just say that.
All right.
There were some kids up there. They're not working. You know what I mean? So it is what it is.
I mean, there were some that look like kids who
that's
look like they were working, but
that's because I'm old. But there were also actual children with the exact same credential that we had.
Really?
Down on the field.
Okay.
So, but again, it's whatever.
Full Life, thank you for the super chat. Overall, would you say your optimism going into year 4 of the Marcus Freeman era is higher than going into year 3? What about your overall expectations for year 4 based on what we know at this time versus year 3?
Oh, it's definitely higher for me than it was going into year 3. For me, there's no doubt. And a lot of it has to do with what happened in year 3. Look, I will say, I said this to Sean, and we kind of had a bit of a debate about it, or we talked about it. And Brian, for that matter. I still think this team overachieved this year overall. I was not predicting that this team was going to go to the national championship game.
Right. Especially when you factor the injuries, all of the injuries into this.
They overcame a lot. Okay. This isn't, Kirk Herbstreit with Ohio State overcoming, going through hell and then coming back. This is an actual overcoming something with all the injuries that Notre Dame had, and they were in the national championship game. So they overachieved. Now, I didn't think that was going to happen. Year 4, with all the guys coming back. Now, here's the flip side of those injuries, right? A lot of guys got a lot of playing time that we were not anticipating would get playing time that are going to be counted on in 25 with a ton more experience than they would have had if everybody stayed healthy the entire season. That's a huge bonus going into 25. It may have been a negative in 24, but it is now a huge bonus going into 25. So I do have more faith going into year 4 based on who's coming back. I think Marcus Freeman has grown as a coach, right? I think the team has grown, and I think the overall talent level will be better in year 4 than it was in year 3.
I said, I think it would have been after the Georgia game, that when you think of just the growth that Marcus Freeman has had as a head coach, as a game head coach, the way he manages games, that alone grew by leaps and bounds just over the course of the season. He put himself into the echelon of being elite. We were watching before we went to the game, Greg McElroy said that if Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame had won the national championship, that you can make a great case that Marcus Freeman becomes the face of college football when you consider there's no Nick Saban anymore. You don't have a guy like Urban Meyer anymore, and those kind of guys. Obviously, that didn't happen, but Marcus Freeman has put himself into that upper echelon of coaches. All the rankings, you're going to see postseason coaches rankings, and Marcus Freeman was pretty consistently in terms of head coaches in the country ranked, in the 30s, kind of in that range. Maybe low 20s is where he's been, at the highest the last couple of years. But when you see those rankings come out now, at a minimum, he's going to be in the top 10. And that alone gives me great optimism for what next year can be compared to what this year was. And when you add all the experience that they're going to have coming back, that puts it up even higher. But again, biggest question is going to be quarterback.
Welcome in, everybody.
Defensive coordinator as well. Did you hear that?
It was me. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
I may or may not doing double duty working on another show at the same time. My bad. My bad.
Are you editing while you're talking? Is that what
I was going to, but obviously that's not going to work because the audio is coming out of my computer and not my headphones. So that's not going to work. So I'm going to put that to the side.
So while we're on the subject of Freeman, let me just throw this out there. Did you buy or sell? Because you and I haven't had a chance to talk about this, in a show
surprising since we
format.
spent so much time in the car. But
did you buy or sell Marcus Freeman's decision to attempt the field goal on 4th and 9 when they were down by 16 points?
That's a loaded question, and here's why I will say that. In the moment, I was like, really? Like, that's what we're going to do? Like that,
Right.
Now, towards the end of the game, everybody was like, man, that 3 points would be real great right about now.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? When they were down by 8, and it would have been 5, which would have been a major difference, at that point in the game. So he's absolutely right. His explanation was, at that point, when you're down 16, you go for 3, then you're down, it was 16.
If you get the field goal, you're down by 13. Yeah.
Right. You're down 13. It's a lot easier to get 13 than it is to get 16, because to get 16, you got to get 2 2-point conversions.
And it's a lot easier to get 14 than it is 16.
Correct.
Because you don't have to convert 2 2-point conversions. Right.
Correct. So the odds go up if you have if you're trailing by 13 as opposed to 16. So in that regard, I get it. It was 4th and 9, 4th and goal from the 9. That's a tough ask, obviously. Obviously, it ended up they missed it. So, I mean, revisionist history, obviously. But you figure at that point, it's a gimme field goal. You're going to get 3 points. It's still 2 possessions. I get that. So I guess looking back, I don't have a problem with it because I understand his rationale behind it. I thought it was hilarious seeing somebody posted about how Notre Dame didn't deserve to win because their coach didn't have he didn't want to go for it. And like, he didn't have the killer instinct to win the game because he went for a field goal there. It's like, wow, tell me you've never watched a Notre Dame game and watched Marcus Freeman coach.
Right. I mean,
come on. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
If it's 4th and 5, maybe. I think there's a much greater case for going for it. But, look at the couple plays before that. And I mean, like Riley Leonard threw that pass to Jaden Greathouse. He wasn't, he was going to get stopped short of the goal, well short of the goal line anyway. At the best case, you're going to be around the 4-yard line there. So then, again, like maybe that gives you a chance. But Jeremiah Love was also standing there wide open in the backfield, and Leonard could have just flipped it to him. And then Love's got a one-on-one matchup to get into the end zone. And, he probably scores if Leonard just flips him the pass there, but instead it's 4th and 9, and it's not 4th and 5, and goal, 4th and goal from the 9 instead of 4th and goal from the 5 or the 4. And I think that's a lot different equation, especially when you factor in like that is Ohio State's thing, like red zone defense is their thing. They keep teams out of the end zone, and that's what they did in that situation. Again, because then if you flip it to how good Ohio State is as a red zone team.
Yeah.
And then you're also talking about you still got to get, 2 touchdowns and 2 extra points. Well, I mean, extra points are basically just short touchdowns in the red zone, right? Against a great red zone team. And Notre Dame, to their credit, converted a couple of 2-point conversions, but the more that you have to get, the greater the odds work against you. So I can see his rationale. And again, like that's a decision that he's got to make in real time. And like you said, you have that 3. If he doesn't hit the upright there, then that 3 would have been pretty valuable the way things worked out after that.
Yep. Completely agree. So, I mean, I didn't like it in the moment, but I understand it looking back. Does that make sense? Like that's kind of where I'm at.
No, I kind of was the same way. I was like, wasn't thrilled, but then to hear, again, like to hear him explain what his rationale was, I can completely see that. I can completely see it. So Sam Pendleton, Deion Colzie, Jaden Thomas all went to the transfer portal for Notre Dame today. Are you surprised by all of them, some of them, or none of them?
None of them. Ooh. I'm not overly surprised. I think you and I that talked about what do you do if Jaden Thomas wants to come back? Didn't you and I talk about that? Yeah.
Yep.
He's one of those guys that if he wants to come back, you welcome him with open arms because I think he's a good leader. I think he's a good guy to have in the room, that kind of stuff. The wide receiver room is still young, to be honest with you. You extract Colzie and Thomas out of that room's still pretty young. So I think I'm a little surprised. And yet I think both of these guys, Colzie and Thomas, want to go someplace where they're going to play some more. Or I shouldn't even say play more because Jaden Thomas played a bunch. It's just a matter of he wasn't really targeted a bunch. And I think he wants to go someplace where that could be the case. And he's leaving with a degree. I don't have a problem with it. He was probably going to get passed over by, Malachi Fields, maybe Gilbert, that kind of a thing. So it was probably time if he wants to keep playing. So I have no problem with it. So not really surprised, but a little disappointed because I really like Colsey and I really like Thomas. I would have loved to see those guys stick around, to be honest with you, but I totally understand where they're coming from. Yeah.
I'm surprised by none of these moves. You kind of spelled it out with the receivers. Both of these guys, good job with leadership, especially Jaden Thomas. And, that would have been the biggest reason, that for Jaden Thomas to come back because, he is one of the leaders on this team. And again, things that we've heard say that he was one of the guys sticking up for Christian Gray in the locker room.
Yep.
Team
after guy.
The game the
Love
other
it.
night. Yeah, that's
Team
exactly
guy,
right.
Leader, all of that. And as far as Sam Pendleton is concerned, I think the writing was on the wall for him.
There's just look at the numbers, he was listed as the number 2 center on the depth chart by the end of the season. And you've got Ashton Craig coming back next year. There's just so much talent coming in that room that it's really tough.
He just kind of got edged out. And look, here's what you need to know, right? He was, to my knowledge, he's 100% healthy, and they had an injured Rocco Spindler playing instead. And so that kind of tells you where he's at on the depth chart or where he's at as far as what the coaches think. Sam Pendleton's going to go someplace and be a starter. And that's what he wants. And I have no problem with that. So that's a situation where there's a ton of talent in that offensive line room. There's going to be some guys that are going to leave. Sam just happened to be the first one. And I wish him nothing but the best.
Ditto. Echo those sentiments. Exactly. Sportsman Philly 22. Why was Jeter rushing his kick? Why couldn't they get it ready faster? It definitely looked like he was wound up a little bit too much.
Yeah, I don't remember specifically if it was a rushed situation. I haven't.
It just seemed to me like he was trying to kick the crud out of it and didn't really need to. Should have just been a nice, easy swing, and
because the ball was on the 9, so that's 19 plus 7. That's a
27
yard goal. Yeah, 27 yards is what they meant. Because I think they go 8 back. So that's a chip shot, man. So yes, it's on the hash and you're close, so you do have to kind of aim it a little bit and adjust kind of what you do. But I don't know if he was rushed per se. But yeah, I agree with you on that one. He tried to kick the snot out of it and just overswung. And that's why it went too far left and hit the upright. It's tough.
I think we're gonna finish it up with that, Vince. Yeah.
I gotta go to school tomorrow, Sean Stiers.
I know. We were here for a while tonight. I don't have to go to school, but
you get to kick it around in Boston.
That's right.
So are you getting a good location? You get to walk around a little bit?
There's actually, in terms of things around us, there's really nothing around us.
Okay.
There's a big park next to us where there's walking trails next to the Charles River.
I know you like walks in the morning.
I think there's a Starbucks in the lobby.
Okay.
Starbucks not my number one.
No, it's not.
It's ironic that we're in Boston and there's no Dunkin' nearby because Dunkin' is my go-to.
It is.
But I might have to, I might go grab the coffee and do a little trail walk in the morning. That might be my thing.
There you go. What's the temp out there right now? Is it pretty cold?
It was a little warmer out here, I think, than it was in South Bend. It was in the 30s, I think, when we got it. So
heat wave.
No, practically.
Heat wave, baby. It's 19 here right now. So
I agree, Salty. Starbucks, way too bitter sight. Dunkin', nice, smooth. Vince and Brian aren't coffee guys, so neither one of them have any clue what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I don't know how you guys drink coffee. It's gross. I don't know how you do it.
Outland, Outland's there with me. DD for life. I started drinking Dunkin' probably around the time that I met you. It's been 20 years or so.
As long as I've known you, you've been a Dunkin' guy. Like anytime
right.
you and I have ever done anything in a car for an extended period of time, we have to stop at Dunkin'. That's always been the case.
That's right.
So I'm used to it.
You guys rolled your eyes at me when we were leaving the hotel.
I knew it was
Kentucky
coming.
Last week. I was like, I found a Dunkin'. And Vince was like, all right, whatever.
You did offer to get us something if we wanted it, though. So I appreciate that.
I did.
Yeah. My son, on the other hand, is a coffee guy. So
really?
he was drinking coffee
that's
right along
He was
with
drinking coffee he got his coffee at Buc-ee's on the way back. Now that
he did. I blame this internship program that he has because they have a coffee maker, like this fancy coffee maker. So he makes himself a fancy coffee every single day.
Got him hooked on it, huh?
And he got him hooked. So he's not spending the money on like Dunkin' and Starbucks and stuff, but he drinks it.
See, Carlos asks a very good question. How do you function without coffee? I mean, how do you?
I just drink milk every morning. I don't know. That's where I'm at.
Vince's milk.
I'm a milk guy. So caffeine doesn't affect me at all. So I don't know if that's like a superpower or something. Like I could go upstairs right now and just like smash a Mountain Dew and fall right asleep without any problem. So
see, I drink coffee all morning, but if I drink it too late, I'm up all night. Is the way it goes.
Yikes.
All right.
Yikes.
We'll go ahead and wrap it up
all
with
right.
that. I've got a basketball game tomorrow, so I won't be around.
This is true.
I think you guys will.
TBA on the show. We'll see what happens. Got to find myself a co-host. Got to figure that part out. But
is Junior? Has he got something going on tomorrow?
Yes, he's going to be out of town. I believe
made up bowling holiday or something like that.
Yeah, I believe he's going to be out of state in one of them southern states tomorrow, according to the little sheet we have here. So that's all I got. So I got to figure something out.
Thanks for hanging out late with us. We had a little late night Ivy Nation. Great questions.
I'm glad
tonight
you made it happen because
I'm glad we could. I didn't want to go a whole week without doing a show after championship game a couple days ago.
That's fair.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's going to do it for tonight. Great talking to you, and we will talk to you later this week on Ivy Nation Sports.
See you, everybody.